It started with silence. The Zorthon Empire's command ship hovered in the black void of space, cold and motionless. Commander Talvek stood near the edge of the holotable, his 4 eyes locked onto the last transmission from the elite strike. Force. The image was still playing over and over again. It showed the team entering the outer shell of Earth's outpost on Ganymede, one of Jupiter's moons. They moved fast, silent, and organized. Their armor shimmered with advanced camouflage. The squad leader raised a fist. The others spread out. Then came the final message, barely 2 seconds before the feed cut. We're inside. But isn't a military base? It's something else. Then nothing. No signal. No distress call. No explosions. Just silence. Tolvek had led dozens of planetary assaults. He had seen units fall, scream, burn, but never vanish. These were the Zorthon. Elite. Trained from youth. Cloned for perfection. Armed with the finest tech in the galaxy. 12 warriors went in. 0 came back. It made no sense. He replayed the footage again, slower. He noticed something this time, just before the feed cut out. A shadow. Not the team. Not the walls. Movement. Behind them, fast. Too fast. Talvek narrowed his eyes and leaned closer. That shadow had moved against the light source. As if it wasn't part of the world they were in, he straightened up. Play it again. Freeze at frame 326, enhance quadrant 7. The holomage zoomed in. The shape was barely visible now. It looked humanoid. But the proportions were wrong. The legs were too long, the neck too short, and its skin or armor seemed to bend light. Talvek turned toward his communications officer. Have we received any reply from Earth? The officer shook his head. Nothing, Commander. Earth has not acknowledged the incident. Not even a formal complaint about the attack. That was the strangest part. The Zorthons had just launched a full force. Military operation on a human outpost, and Earth had said nothing. No warnings, no threats, not even a word of protest. Talva clenched his fists behind his back. Something was wrong. This was supposed to be a test, a message. The outpost was far from Earth, lightly guarded, an easy target the Empire had wanted. To remind humans of their place, to remind them that Earth was still watched, still vulnerable. But now, Earth wasn't answering. It was waiting. The Galactic Council had approved this mission. After all, humanity had been growing too bold, too curious, building ships with engines the Council didn't understand, sending drones into restricted space, refusing to share their newest technology, refusing to fear that had to change. So the strike force was sent. But now, they were gone. Talvek moved to the side screen and brought up the latest satellite images of Ganymede. The outpost looked intact. Its external weapons were powered down. The surface appeared calm. But inside, they didn't know. Satellites tried to scan the interior of the outpost, but the data came back distorted. Maps twisted. Heat readings flickered. Power signatures, clit. One probe sent toward the outpost disappeared 3.2 seconds after entry. Talvek ordered a second, and a third. None returned. Back in the Empire's capital, whispers were starting. Senators asked questions behind closed doors. News anchors spoke carefully about a missing team. Civilians talked about Earth like an old story coming back to life. One word kept appearing in secret reports, revenant. Talvek didn't like that word. The revenant was an old human rumor. Some said it was an AI that gained awareness. Others believed it was a failed weapon, buried deep by Earth's government. Some thought it wasn't human at all, but something humanity had found and tried to control. The Zorthon Empire never believed in such things. But now Talvek wasn't so sure. Back in the surveillance room, the sensors picked up a new signal. A faint energy pulse. Not from the surface, but deep underground. It lasted 1.4 seconds, then vanished. The same pulse was detected at another human. Based this time on Titan. What the hell are they doing? Talvek whispered to himself. A junior officer approached, his voice shaking. Commander, should we alert the council? Talvik looked at him. No, not. Yet we don't know what we're dealing with. We don't show fear. He paused. But prepare another team. This time they won't go in alone. We'll send observation drones with them. Real-time monitoring. And if we lose them too? Talvik didn't answer. 3 days later, the second strike team landed. They were heavier. Armed with plasma drills, exosuits, and a mobile jammer to block enemy tech. The ship hovered above as the team entered. One of the drones flew just behind them, streaming live visuals to Talvik's command room. The entrance was quiet. No movement. No lights. Inside, the walls were made of dull silver. No markings. No signs of human design. "Do you see this?" said one of the troopers. "This place. It's like a maze." They moved in deeper rooms twisted in impossible directions, always curved back on themselves. Gravity shifted slightly at odd points. One soldier reported nausea. Another claimed he heard whispering through the walls. Then the drone caught something at the far end of the corridor, just a flicker. A humanoid. Figure still. Watching, the lead soldier raised his rifle. Contact. Requesting permission to engage. Wait. Talvik didn't respond. He was frozen, watching the screen. The figure wasn't attacking. It wasn't moving at all. It was just standing. The drone zoomed in. The figure was wearing a human spacesuit, but it wasn't right. The helmet was too smooth. The joints moved like liquid. No visible face inside then, without warning. The lights inside the outpost blinked red. The camera feed began to distort. Audio cut in and out. Screaming filled the room, short, high-pitched, metallic. The last words came from the team's engineer. "It's not a base. It's alive." Then silence again. Talvik crushed the glass in his hand. 2 teams. Gone. This wasn't war. It was something else Earth was watching. Earth was testing. Talvik finally sent a message to the Galactic Senate. "We need to talk." But before the Senate could respond, something happened that broke every rule of space warfare. One of the troopers returned. He appeared near the outer edge of Zorthon territory aboard a stolen human transport vessel. The ship was drifting, no signals, no damage. When boarding teams arrived, they found the trooper in a corner, curled up, whispering to himself. His skin had turned pale. His eyes were pure black. They brought him to the medical station. He didn't fight. He didn't move. Only one thing escaped his mouth. "They showed us what comes after death." When asked what he meant, he just stared. Later that night, he vanished. The cameras caught a blur, like something pulling away from this dimension. In his place, only a symbol remained. Burned into the floor, it glowed, pulsed, and no one could read it. To how Vek stood before the projection of the symbol, his hands behind his back, his face pale. The humans weren't responding because they didn't have to. This wasn't a defense. This was a trap. The outpost wasn't a military site. It was a gate. A test. A prison, and the Zorthan Empire had opened it. Across the galaxy, other species began to notice. Ships passing near Ganymede reported strange visions. Engines failed for no reason. AI systems spoke in human voices. And yet, Earth's official channels remained silent. They didn't deny anything. They didn't explain anything. They simply waited. Back on Talvik's command ship, the alarms rang again. Another pulse. Stronger this time, but not from Ganymede. This one came from Earth, and it matched the exact same energy pattern as the outpost. Talva turned to his crew. "Get me every sensor feed on Earth." Now, the screen filled with Earth's orbit. Civilian. Satellites, space stations, few defensive platforms, nothing unusual until it appeared. A ship, just one. Black, massive, silent. It hadn't been there before. No engine trail. No warp signature. It just arrived. On its side. In clean, simple letters, Arrivi and Ain. And then the feed cut out. All channels. All sensors. Offline. In their place, a single message blinked on Talvik's screen. No one escaped. No one will. Talvik stepped back. It was no longer about a strike force. It's no longer about fear or dominance. This was a warning, and Earth had given it without firing a single shot. The drone arrived in orbit 12 hours after the second team vanished. It was small, fast, and built to avoid attention. No lights, no sounds, no signals. Its only job was to enter the human outpost on Ganymede, record everything, and leave. If something moved, it would see it. If something lived, it would tag it. But as the drone passed over the outpost, something strange happened. It shook, not from damage, not from impact. Something inside it trembled. Its onboard systems logged a temperature drop, but the readings didn't make sense. Ganymede was cold, but the drone suddenly felt colder. Beyond science. Like the air itself had become afraid. The outpost looked normal from above. Still silent. No damage to the structure. Its tall walls, smooth surface, and black windows reflected the weak sunlight from Jupiter. No guns aimed upward. No signs of movement. The drone moved closer. It floated down slowly, scanning every surface. Nothing unusual. No bodies, no weapons, no heat signatures. But the readings were still off. Time seemed to flicker. 1 second passed, then stretched, then snapped back. The drone ignored it. Machines didn't fear. That was the gift of programming. It entered the outer door. The hallway inside was long, straight, and made of a silver material the drone's database couldn't identify. The walls were seamless. The ceiling had no lights, but everything glowed softly, as if the walls were lit from inside. There were no signs of battle, no laser burns, no blood, no dropped weapons, just silence. Then the drone's camera picked up something, a smudge. It zoomed in. The floor ahead had strange marks, not footprints, something more like dragging. Deep, wide, uneven. As if something heavy had been pulled into the next room, or dragged itself. The drone followed. Its sensors began glitching. It's not failing, it's changing. Its infrared stopped working. Sound sensors picked up quiet humming, but the frequency was unnatural. Then it entered the central chamber. The drone stopped. It wasn't a room. It was a void. An open space perfectly round, with no clear walls or ceiling. The floor was solid, but it bent downward into a massive circular pit. At the center of the pit, something was floating. It was a cube. Black, silent, small, maybe the size of a chair. But the drone's motion sensors said the cube was pulsing, not physically somewhere deeper. It's like it was breathing energy around. The pit were 12 helmets, Zorthon helmets. They were arranged in a circle, perfectly spaced, perfectly clean. The rest of the bodies were missing. The drone tried to zoom in, but its camera began distorting. Lines appeared, colors bent. Noise filled the feed. Then, without warning, something moved. A shadow flickered across the far edge of the room. The drone spun to track it. But there was nothing, only a soft imprint on the floor. One boot. Human-sized. The drone's audio sensors picked up a whisper. It was not speech, not language. Just the sound of something breathing where nothing should breathe. And then, shape. Stepped forward, it wore a suit. Human in design. But again wrong. Too smooth. Too long. The joints moved like smoke. The faceplate was pure black. It looked at the drone, not directly, not with eyes, but the machine felt it. Something deep in. Its programming dash screamed. The drone backed away. It tried to send the feed to the Zorthon fleet. Tried to upload the footage, but the outpost didn't allow it. The signal bounced, reflected, then vanished. The figure stepped closer. The drone launched a flare-pure light, meant to blind sensors. The flare blinked, died, darkness. Silence then. The drone's camera caught the figure again now. Beside the cube, it touched the cube gently. The cube pulsed once, then the drone's last. Video was sent, just 0.5 seconds of footage, made it out before it died. The video was received by the Zorthon command vessel. Commander Talvek viewed it on repeat. At first it looked like static, but frame by frame it showed something. First the room, then the helmets, then the cube, then a figure reaching toward the camera. Its hand was human, but the skin was wrong. Too pale, too smooth, no fingernails, no veins, like something wearing a human shape. From memory, Talvek didn't move. He watched the footage again, the last image before the feed cut. A reflection in the cube's surface, it showed the 12 Zorthon warriors standing still like statues. Their eyes were open. They were not breathing. Not blinking, frozen, locked in place. And behind them, something else. A second figure. Not human. Not alien. Just wrong. No one could describe it. The moment anyone looked at the figure, they forgot what it looked like. The brain refused to hold its shape. Scientists at Zorthon HQ tried to analyze the video. They slowed it down, broke it into frames, filtered the noise. Every time they zoomed in on the figure, the computers crashed, not just failed. They burned. One AI melted down completely. It kept repeating the same word, echo. That was when the Zorthon High Senate ordered a blackout. No more news. No more missions. The official story? The Outpost was destroyed by accident. Radiation. Leak. The strike teams died honorably, but Talvek knew better. He saw the truth. The cube wasn't technology. It wasn't a weapon. It was a memory. Earth had left it there maybe years ago, maybe longer, and it waited. Not for an enemy. For a visitor. The strike force didn't die in battle. They didn't fight. They were simply absorbed, turned into something else. The Zorthons called for a full council meeting, but Earth still said nothing. Not a single message, not a single word then. 3 days later, something changed. The cube activated. Again, even from orbit, sensors picked up its signal. It wasn't radio, it wasn't energy, it was deeper. Like a psychic scream, not pain. Warning. The same signal was picked up on another moon, Titan, and on a mining colony near Alpha Centauri. That's when the council realized there was more than one cube. There were many, hidden, waiting, and only Earth knew where they were. A deep panic began to spread across the galaxy. Some species began withdrawing from human trade routes. Others tried to block Earth's ships. Few tried to send probes toward Earth itself, but those never returned. Earth's silence was no longer seen as weakness. It was fear. Controlled. Fear. Talvek stood in the dark looking at the star map. So many planets, so many threats. But one world, blue and distant, sat at the center of it all. Calm, quiet, and now untouchable. Talvek gave his final order. No more missions to Earth territory. But sir, the officer said, what about the missing soldiers? What about revenge? Talvek looked at the cube's last image. There is no revenge, only survival. The officer hesitated. Do you think they're still alive? Talvek didn't answer for a long time. Then he spoke slowly. Not in any way we'd recognize. Back on Ganymede, deep inside the outpost, the cube pulsed once more, and the walls whispered. They came looking for war. But war was not waiting. It started quietly, a whisper through data. A change in background code. The surveillance stations didn't notice it at first, but then one by one, systems across Zorthon space began to stutter. Military servers blinked out for seconds at a time. Communication. Links restarted mid-signal.ai systems. Repeated strange lines of code with no source. It was easy to blame solar flares or software errors. That's what the Empire told the public. But deep inside, a secure vault on the capital moon of Keltar. The truth was stored in a small glass room. A soldier stood inside, motionless. He was one of the strike team survivors, or so they believed. At first, he had returned alone, in a stolen human shuttle, floating silently at the edge of space. The shuttle's systems were burned out. No logs, no navigation. He had no armor left, no ID chip, and no explanation. But he had something else. He was breathing. That was the first sign something was wrong. The Zorthon soldiers didn't breathe like humans. Their biology worked differently. Their lungs were adapted to methane-rich atmospheres. But this soldier, This one was breathing like a human, slowly, calmly, even stranger. His skin had changed, not visibly at first, but scans showed a shift in texture, a soft sheen, as if something beneath the surface had rewired him. Doctors ran tests. His blood was gone, placed with a thick, clear liquid. His eyes had no pupils. His DNA, once sharp and clean, now pulsed with lines of unknown data. They kept him inside containment, sealed, guarded. But he never moved, never spoke until he did. One night, without warning, turned his head toward the security camera. His lips moved. The audio feed picked up a low sound, a deep, cold whisper they showed me. The guards froze. "Showed you what?" one asked. Soldier didn't respond. But his eyes lit up just for a second, with a faint blue glow. Then the lights across the entire facility died. All systems crashed. When they returned, the soldier was gone. No breach. No escape logs. Nothing. Only a message left burned into the floor of his cell. 3 words. "We remember now." Talvik read the report with shaking hands. He had seen many things during war. This was beyond battle. This was transformation. The survivors weren't survivors. They were messengers. And the message wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Something had changed inside them, rewritten them, but not with weapons. Not with pain. With knowledge. A kind of silent weapon Earth had never shared. A weapon that didn't destroy bodies but minds. Back on Ganymede, the outpost remained quiet, still, but orbital sensors detected strange energy shifts beneath the surface. The cube that had once floated in the center chamber had disappeared in its place. Pattern remained, a sequence of symbols carved into the ground. Perfectly symmetrical, no one could translate it. The top minds of the Zorthon Empire, the Krell, the Vern, even the machine intelligence of Vec. Primal failed. The symbols looked like language, but they acted like code, and when certain symbols were copied into a database, they didn't just sit there. They changed the system itself. One AI tried to process the pattern. It shut down in 3.4 seconds. When rebooted, it whispered in a human voice. It was never yours to find. The Empire called for an emergency meeting. Joint Task Force was created, a plan to block Earth's outer colonies. Satellites were aimed at human trade lines. Scans increased. Earth's civilian channels were watched closely. Still, Earth said nothing, not one word, until the pulse came. Every Zorthon ship near the solar system received the same signal. It was short. No voice, no images, just a burst of data wrapped in. Silence. When decoded, it played a soft, rhythmic sound, a heartbeat, and a sentence. You opened it. Now live with it. Ships across the region began reporting malfunctions. Weapons failed to respond. Gravity fields twisted. AI navigators went silent. One warship's log reported strange hallucinations. The crew saw people walking the halls, people that weren't real. All of them looked human, and all of them whispered the same thing. Revenant has woken. The Zorthon Empire started to panic. Fear was a virus, fast, infectious, even among species with no emotions. The data itself became dangerous. Systems refused to store it. Communication relays deleted reports on their own. They tried to lock it down, but it was too late. Across the network, the pattern spread. The symbols from the outpost, the whispers from the survivors, the strange pulse, all traveled faster than light. Not through engines, but through minds. It wasn't a weapon in the old sense. It didn't destroy, it transformed. Talvik stared at the files. Thousands of pages of data, corrupted ships, lost without battle, troops abandoning posts with no explanation. One station reported a man standing in the center of their mess hall. He wore a black suit with no emblem, no markings. He said nothing, then vanished into the floor. No ship landed, no breach, just there, dot and gone. The station shut down. 18 hours later, everyone on board reported the same dream before evacuation. A cube floating in a dark room, and a voice inside it. Calling their name, Talvik sat alone in his command room. He had stopped sleeping. The dreams came for him too now. He saw the figure in the suit, always just standing, always watching, and each time it came closer. On the last night he heard it speak. One word. Soon. Talvik opened the sealed report again. The one Earth had sent long ago, before the strike force, before the outpost. It wasn't labeled as urgent. It wasn't even labeled as a threat. Just a single paragraph, quiet, clear. If you come, you will not return. This place does not forget. We do not speak of what lies beneath it. We only keep it asleep. Talvik closed the file. It had never been about war. It had been about Orthon. The Zorthan Empire had wanted to test humanity, to see how strong they were, but they hadn't tested Earth's armies. They had tested Earth's patience. And Earth had responded without lifting a hand. Talvik stepped into the strategy chamber. His officers stood waiting. What do we do now? They asked. He looked at the star map, then at Earth. Nothing, he said. We do nothing. We stay away. Commander, I said nothing. Across the stars, systems flickered. One by one, satellites failed. A quiet storm began to move through subspace. Slow. Invisible. It's unstoppable. Earth didn't launch a war. They let the galaxy feel the echo of what they had buried. And somewhere, deep inside Ganymede, in a place no one dared return to, a voice spoke into the dark. You thought we forgot. We never did. They thought it was a military base, eh? Small one, quiet, easy to crush. That's why they chose it. Earth's outpost on Ganymede had no visible weapons, no big shields, and no fleet guarding it. Just a cold building carved into the moon's surface half. Buried, half exposed to the black sky, so the Zorthan Empire attacked it, and now they regretted everything. The first team disappeared, the second went mad. Survivor changed into something else. And the cube, whatever it was, had started whispering into machines across the galaxy. But none of that explained why the outpost existed in the first place. Why would Earth build something in deep space, put no real guards around it, and leave it filled with whatever that was? The answer came from an unexpected place. A leak. Not from Earth. From the Zorthons. Someone inside the Galactic Science Council broke a security wall and uploaded an old intercepted human transmission. It was labeled Project Revenant. Site-17. It had been sitting in storage for years, ignored, untouched. It wasn't a military plan. It wasn't a warning. It was a research log. The file was short only 67 seconds of video. It showed a small room with dim lights. A man in a gray Earth science uniform spoke into the camera. His voice was tired. If you're seeing this, it means you went looking. You shouldn't have. He looked over his shoulder. The screen behind him showed schematics of the Ganymede outpost. This site wasn't built for defense. It wasn't made for war. He paused. It was made to observe. He leaned in closer. We didn't create what's down there. We found it. He stared into the camera for a long moment. Site-17 was never a base. It was a test. He wanted to see what would happen if something touched it again. The screen went black. That was all. But it was enough. Across the galaxy, chaos spread. The news reached every species. The outpost wasn't an accident. It wasn't a trap. It was a question. And the strike force was the answer they had stepped into. A place that wasn't made to defend Earth, it was made to watch others. To see how they reacted to what was buried beneath. For a long time, humans had said nothing. No threats. No retaliation. But now, the truth made itself known. Earth hadn't responded because Earth didn't need to. The outpost was doing exactly what it was designed for. Inside the Ganymede structure, the cube had returned, but it was no longer floating. It sat at the bottom of the chamber, surrounded by glowing lines in the floor. 12 Zorthon helmets remained in a perfect circle. Each now had a symbol burned into the forehead. Different from before, translated into Zorthon script. Symbols. Spelled a message. Observed. Processed. Rejected. The science teams who saw this went silent. What did rejected mean? Was the strike force destroyed? No, they were tested, and they failed. But failed what? No one could say. Even the bravest scientists didn't dare return to the outpost. Every drone sent down now came back, empty, cameras burned out, data wiped. The further they tried to go, the more reality bent. One drone swore it flew for 2 minutes only, to discover that 5 days had passed on the outside. Another returned carrying a human voice, loop in its memory. They weren't ready. You're not either. Galactic Senate demanded a response from Earth. Earth answered with one short message. Broadcast across open space, you came to test our strength. You tested something older. No one understood what that meant. Older than Earth. Older than humanity. Theories spread like fire. Some said humans had uncovered ancient alien tech. Others believed they had built an AI so powerful it warped time. But those who had studied Earth's behavior over centuries saw something deeper. Earth was never quiet by accident, they had learned. Silence. Humans had sent signals into space for generations. And then, one day, they stopped. Not because they gave up, but because they heard something back. The Ganymede outpost wasn't Earth's first attempt. It was just the only one left working. There were whispers of other sites destroyed. It's buried or forgotten, some on Mars, some in deep space. One rumored to be drifting near the edge of the galaxy, all connected by one idea. Earth had found something, and they didn't try to control it. They watched it, learned from it, and eventually built a way to use it, not as a weapon, but as a test. Mirror something that showed others what they really were, and if those others failed, the consequences weren't fire or lasers. Or war. The consequences were silence. That was worse. Zorthon's space began to fall apart from within. Leaders turned on each other. Accusations spread. Who authorized the attack? Who knew about Earth's warning? Who deleted the science reports? Meanwhile, Earth stayed quiet. Their ships didn't move. Their borders remained unchanged. But small things began to happen. Zorthon. AI started repeating human names in their sleep cycles. Navigation software refused to plot courses. Near Ganymede and in deep space. Human ships were seen for the first time in months. Not warships. Explorers. Floating slowly, calmly, watching. A new fear began to grow. What if Earth wasn't preparing for war at all?
Ow.
What if they were preparing for something else? What if that something had already awakened? Tolvek sat alone in the war room. He watched the symbol left by the returning soldiers still glowing on the floor. The lights in the chamber flickered. One word echoed in his mind. Test. He now understood the strike force hadn't been wiped out. They had been part of an experiment, and they had failed not because they were weak, but because they came with the wrong intent. They came to dominate, to threaten, to control, and the outpost did not reward control. It punished it. Talvek stood up. He turned off the monitors, shut down the feeds. He gave one final order to the fleet. Do not return. The Zorthan flagship returned in silence. It had been gone for 3 weeks. No signals, no updates. Then, without warning, it dropped out of warp near the edge of Zorthan's space card. Twisted and missing half of its crew, the remaining ones didn't speak. They just stared. Some whispered strange words to themselves. Others stared at walls like something was behind them. Inside the main medical bay, Commander Raish lay strapped to a steel table. His eyes were open, his heart was beating, but he wasn't there. Doctors tried everything. They scanned his brain, injected stim reversers, flashed bright lights. Nothing worked, until he suddenly spoke. 3 words, soft, broken. It followed us. And then he began screaming. The medical bay had to be sealed. That's when the lights started flickering. One by one, systems aboard the ship began failing. Not from damage, but from something inside. Navigation refused commands. Doors opened and closed without reason. The AI stopped responding, except to whisper a single phrase into the bridge comes. Over and over. You shouldn't have brought it, Admiral. Vorn was called in. He stood on the bridge, watching the crew fall apart. Veterans were crying in corners. Some refused to leave their quarters. One officer cut power to his own life support suit just to escape the voices. And they all said the same thing, it's here. But no one could explain what it was until they reached the cargo hold. It had once been used for equipment now. It was empty, except for a shape in the corner. Not quite a shadow, not quite real. It shimmered like heat. Pulsing softly, when light hit it directly, it vanished, but in darkness. It grew stronger. They tried to scan it. Every sensor burned out. They sent a cleaning drone to investigate. The drone flew in, hovered, and went still. When it returned 5 minutes later, it carried a single object, a cube, black, silent, identical to the one found at Earth's Outpost. Admiral Vorn stared at it. He had seen the reports. He knew the strike force had vanished. Near Ganymede, and now. One of the cubes had returned with the only surviving ship, but they hadn't taken it with them. No one had lifted it. No one had moved it. So how did it get there? The crew had no answers. Then the ship began changing. Not physically, mentally. The people aboard stopped speaking in full words. Their language broke. They started drawing symbols on walls. Some spoke in human dialects they'd never learned. Others repeated numbers-long sequences. It's always ending in 17. It's double quote site-17. The name of Earth's mysterious outpost. The doctors were pulled out. The ship was quarantined, but it didn't help. The infection wasn't biological. It was something deeper. It had followed them back, not through space, through thought, and it was spreading. AI cores across the Zorthan fleet began to crash. When rebooted, they displayed the same image. A dark circle, surrounded by orbiting eyes. The Galactic Science Council. I didn't believe it at first. They thought it was a virus, a clever hack. Then their own base. iSecure. Protected spoke without warning. They saw us. They failed. You brought the seed. That was the last thing it ever said. Then, it self-deleted across the Empire. Systems began behaving strangely. Some ships refused jump commands near Earth space. Others wouldn't load weapons. One even turned itself around and flew into a sun. A pattern emerged. Every affected ship, AI or system, had once come close to the Ganymede zone. Even if just for a second. Even if just a scan. Whatever had been sleeping inside that outpost. It had learned, and now it was moving. Not with ships, not with soldiers, but through information, through understanding. Something had observed the Stas, and now it was using their minds as doors. Admiral Vorn issued an emergency lockdown. No ships were to leave infected areas. No one was to approach Earth, and all data regarding Site-17 was to be deleted. But it was too late. The whispers had begun across the Empire in dreams. In dreams and Ascrudium security logs that no one remembered writing. Simple. Messages, you looked, now you are seen. You brought it home. The Zorthans built barriers, firewalls, thought screening fields. Nothing worked because the thing that followed them wasn't inside metal. It was inside them, one by one. Strike Force survivors began to speak in human voices, perfect mimicry. They spoke of stars beyond reach, of timelines that folded, of tests that must continue. But worst of all, they smiled. They weren't in pain. They were calm almost, reverent, as if they'd seen something beautiful then. They began to vanish. No doors opened. No alarms were tripped. They simply disappeared. First the commander, then 2 engineers, then a doctor, just gone. Their last recorded moment was always the same. Looking into the cube and whispering, I understand now. After that, only silence. The Zorthon High Council held an emergency meeting. Their options were few. Attack Earth? Risk unleashing more? Blockade their space? Might already be too late. Some proposed opening diplomatic talks. Others suggested complete retreat from Seoul. But one counselor, Jurel Veng, said what no one wanted to hear. We didn't just awaken something. We invited it in. And the worst part was, humans knew. They had known the whole time. Earth didn't build Site 17 to protect itself. It built it to contain whatever they found. And when the Zorthons attacked it, it broke the container. Now the thing that had once been studied in a hidden chamber was learning, growing, traveling, and changing everyone who touched it. Even now, something drifted through Zorthon space. Invisible, not a ship, not a creature, an idea. And ideas don't need engines. They just need attention. Which is exactly what the Zorthons gave it over and over. Each time they tried to understand it. They fed it. And now, it wanted more. No alarm sounded as the cube on the flagship began, glowing. One soft pulse, then another. The crew stood still as if in prayer. The admiral, who had once been the strongest voice of command, now knelt, eyes open, breathing. Calm. He whispered one word before the feed cut out. Arrival. The dead do not speak. That was a rule Admiral Jurel Veng believed in. For all his years serving the Zorthon High Council, seen soldiers fall, fleets lost, colonies go dark, but they stayed quiet until now. It began with a soft ping, one of 1,000 harmless background echoes bouncing in deep space. The tech officer almost ignored it. Then came another ping. Identical. Same location. Same delay between.
House.
Einen or Wayfwad a Biknai and Sci-fi for I find men with a fref so fun with a per by I want to that's not the way I was since that one so since followed by something more, a voice, broken, static filled. But real, coming from the far edge of Zorthon-controlled territory, coordinates. Matched only one known location sector, 39 Zeta. The exact, last known coordinates of Strike Force Ember. The first fleet sent to Earth's Outpost, the fleet that was supposed to be gone, the voice repeated a simple phrase, "We're still here." At first, they thought it was a glitch, a relay echo, some old message caught in a loop. But then, another. Signal arrived stronger, clearer. This time carrying a Zorthon fleet. ID. The signature was authentic. So was the encryption. It matched Commander Rashah's personal code, the same Rashah who vanished days ago, aboard the returned flagship, and now he was sending a message from 600 light-years. Away inside the black zone, the officers monitoring the signal froze. No one moved. No one breathed. Then the voice came again, this time with more words. We never left. We just saw too much. Across the Empire, panic returned. Admiral Vin ordered a recon drone to jump to the coordinates. It vanished within seconds. No. Damage reported. No. Attack had simply disappeared from all systems. But it sent one last image before its loss. A fleet. Zorthon. Ships, hundreds of them, perfectly intact, floating in formation around something massive. A sphere dark, pulsing, surrounded by rings of energy that didn't follow physics, and standing on the hulls of the Zorthon ships were the crew. No suits, no gear, their skin glowing faintly, smiling, watching alive. And wrong, they shouldn't be breathing, they shouldn't be. Outside, but they were, and they were waving. The drone's final transmission ended, the sound. Not words, not a weapon, just a low hum, deep human, dash-like a voice beneath the stars. After that, every AI in the command center crashed, not violently, just shut down. One by one, screens faded to black dot, and then the lights dimmed. Something had noticed the drone, and it had sent a reply. Jurl stood in silence. He had seen many strange things in his lifetime, but nothing like this. Fleet Ember had vanished. After hitting Site 17, everyone thought they'd died, but they didn't. They'd been changed, and now they were sending messages, not just to the military, but to random civilian satellites, mining stations, and trade relays. Each message slightly different, each meant for someone specific, and all of them ended the same way. The veil is thin. We wait. The messages carried no code, no threat, just words. But those words were doing something. Some people who heard them began acting strange. They stopped sleeping. They drew spirals on walls. One pilot wrote coordinates into his flight path and launched himself toward the black zone without orders. His last words, "I just want to see what they saw." After that, transmissions increased. Earth remained silent. Not a word from humans, but the Zorthons were unraveling. Some believed the messages weren't just signals but traps. Conceptual viruses, data so strange, so unnatural, that minds couldn't handle it. Ideas that rewrote understanding, like weapons that didn't need bombs, just your attention. The more you tried to understand the signals, the more you felt it creeping into your thoughts. That's when the disappearances began again. This time not just from infected ships, but from regular homes. Scientists, engineers, pilots, people who had seen the broadcasts began vanishing. The security footage always showed the same thing. A person staring at a blank screen, pausing, smiling, and then walking away into nowhere. No doors, no exits, just gone, as if they stepped into a shadow and were pulled out of reality. JURAL. Vin demanded answers from the Science Council. They offered only one theory. It wasn't Earth doing this. Not directly. It was the thing beneath Site-17, the entity humans had once studied, then buried, then locked away under an outpost no one was supposed to visit. It had seen the strike force, and now, it's like a mirror. It was sending pieces of them back. Reflections, echoes, maybe even duplicates. But were they really the same people? No one could tell. The new signals contained more than voices. They carried memories, files filled with images from the fleet, conversations that matched real logs, perfect replications. But there was always one thing. The smiles. Too wide, too long. Almost. Practiced, JURAL, watched the latest file. It showed Commander Raish in the fleet mess hall. Laughing with his officers, they looked normal, sounded normal, until he turned to the camera and stared directly into it, breaking the fourth wall. His voice dropped into something cold, soft, terrible. You're watching now. That's all it needs. Then the video corrupted. After that, more messages came. Not just from the original fleet, but from copies of ships that never existed. Vessels that matched no known Zorthon design. Each one marked with a strange symbol 3. Lines crossing in a spiral. Ships that sent messages in every known language. In some unknown, they were building something. Or preparing. Or maybe just expanding. No. One could tell the only thing certain was this. The more attention they got, the faster they spread. One science vessel tried to shut it down. They erased all known signals. Locked their own minds behind thought filters. Refused to look. The next day, their ship was found in orbit empty. No. Damaged, all systems intact, but not a soul aboard. The logs ended mid-sentence, as if everyone vanished at once, as if even memory had been erased. The High Council debated cutting off all contact with Earth, but Earth never spoke, never sent a single message. They didn't need to, because the thing they had once contained was doing all the talking now, and the final signal of the day. chilled every heart. It wasn't a threat or a command, just a simple, eerie broadcast heard across 3 systems. We thought we were alone. Now we know we are not. Let us show you. What comes next? Then silence. Admiral Jurelvin didn't sleep that night. He knew what the next part would be. Not messages, not disappearances, but something worse. Return, because the signals weren't just calling out. They were calling something in, and that something might not knock. It might already be here. They had prepared for war. Weapons, ships, soldiers, codes. They had drawn battle lines across the stars, planned sieges, practiced invasions. The Zorthons believed Earth was weak. They believed humanity's silence was fear. Now they knew the truth. Earth had never been silent. It was listening, watching, waiting. The recent events shattered everything. The Zorthon High Council believed. Their strike force Ember had disappeared. The few ships that returned were empty, or worse. Now strange signals were spreading across space, and the voices were getting louder. Admiral Jurelvin sat in the war chamber, watching footage on a cracked, flickering screen. The same message played over and over. A man's voice, human.com, unshaken. We warned you not to come. This was never a battlefield. It was a threshold. Every general in the room was silent. No one dared speak, because the message was different this time. It wasn't a warning. It was an evaluation, as if someone or something had judged the Zorthan Empire and found it. Soft beep broke the silence. A new signal had arrived, but this one wasn't coming from the dead zone or the Ghost Fleet. It was coming from inside Zorthon space. A science vessel, the Narthon's Eye, orbiting one of the Council's own moons. Their distress message was short. Don't look at it, don't listen, don't let it in. And static. When a recon drone approached, it found the ship drifting. Life signs none, power levels full. Doors locked until something opened the airlock. From inside, the drone entered. What it recorded didn't make sense. The crew was gone, but not dead. It's not missing. It was as if they had walked out of their own bodies, leaving everything behind: uniforms, implants, even their shadows. One wall had a message burned into it. 8 words. The test is over. You already failed. That night, across 5 Zorthon planets, every communication system lit up with the same feed. A video it showed Earth's outpost. Site-17, but not the ruins, not the surface. This was from below. A cavern. Glowing symbols. Machinery. That looked ancient and alive, and standing in the center was a human. An old man. Gray-bearded. Dressed not in armor, but in a lab coat. Calm. Focused. His voice was deep and clear. I am Dr. Elias Rohn. You came for weapons. For conquest. But this place, this is not a vault. It is a lens. A filter. Signal magnifier. He stepped aside, revealing a massive sphere floating in the center of the chamber. Black and gold. Spinning. Pulsing. It's been watching you. All of you. Since your kind lit your first sun. The image flickered. Then something emerged from the shadows, a shape made of shifting light and patterns. Unreadable, unreal. Rohn's voice returned. You thought this was war. It never was. It was a test. More images flashed on screen. Zorthon. Ships turning to dust in orbit, crew screaming into empty air before vanishing, and then visions. Planets melting into light, stars bending around, invisible masses, time breaking apart like glass. But it wasn't horror. It was data. A demonstration. The message was not. We will destroy you. It was we already understand how to. One general stood and shouted, shut it down, turn off the feed. But every attempt failed. Screens turned back on by themselves. Every Zorthon that touched the file rewrote itself. Every command center infected. But still, Earth sent no fleets, no invasions, only silence and signals. The council met in panic. Some argued to surrender, others wanted retaliation. Admiral Vin said nothing, until one aide whispered something into his ear, another signal different. This time from a place called Station Thatnine, a deep black site. A place even most Sorthons didn't know existed. A place where they had once captured something they thought was human, but it had stopped talking. Years ago, until now, its voice came through the speakers, cold and mechanical, but undeniably. Alive? You failed the entrance? You're not ready? The council asked. Ready for what? The voice laughed. Raider neighborhood. For a moment no one understood, then realization spread. The outpost, the test, the vanishing fleets. Earth had never been defending itself. It had been protecting others, protecting the galaxy. From what was beyond, and when the Zorthons attacked, it had broken that barrier. They had triggered the alarm. Jor-El stood slowly, hands shaking. If we failed the test, what happens next? The voice answered. Now it watches the next ones. But you. You are no longer under observation. You are categorized. What category? One officer asked. The answer came like a knife, obsolete. Within hours, Zorthon ships across 5 sectors shut down, not destroyed, not hijacked, just durned. Off, as if someone had flipped a switch from outside reality. Entire fleets floated dead in space. Colonies lost power. Command centers went dark. No one died, but every tool, every ship, every machine just stopped responding. And Earth, still silent, still untouched. Jor-El. Vin stared at the stars from his office. He had once thought that humans arrogant. Now he realized they were merciful. They could have ended it. They didn't. Because this wasn't about winning. It wasn't about dominance. It was a test. And the Zorthons had failed. But something else was. Coming something watching through the outpost's lens, and it wouldn't be so. Merciful. Not next time. Jor-El's last order was simple. Do not send another ship toward Earth, ever. Because now, they weren't afraid of humans. They were afraid of what humans had kept buried, and what might be coming next. The signal stopped. Just like that. No warning. No countdown. No goodbye. Across every relay, satellite, and command center that was monitoring Earth's mysterious outposts, Site 17, there was one final pulse. Then, silence. It wasn't the silence of damage or destruction. Nothing had exploded. No system had gone offline. The equipment still worked, but the outpost, once a storm of energy and strange signals, was now completely quiet, and the silence wasn't ordinary. It was deep, heavy. It felt like something had left, or something had arrived. On Zorthan Prime, Admiral Vin stood alone in the war chamber. The lights were dim, screens frozen, no new data, no activity from Earth, no images of the glowing sphere or the human scientist. The lens was closed, and everyone felt it. The silence rippled through space in a way that couldn't be explained by physics. Ships in orbit lost contact with their own AI systems for precisely 6 seconds. Clocks paused. Not stopped. Paused like reality itself had hiccuped. Even the sun over the Zorthan capital flickered for a single frame. No one could explain it, but they all knew what it meant. The test was over, and something had decided to move on. On the outskirts of Zorthon space, a mining crew on the asteroid belt received a strange image on their scanners. It wasn't a transmission. It wasn't even a signal. It was burned into their sensor feed. Like it had always been there. A map. One point marked in blue Earth's outpost. Another point somewhere. Deep in dark space, now glowing red. One word. Pulsed across the image. Next. Back on Earth, nothing changed. At least not on the surface. Governments denied involvement. Ouch. News outlets ran stories about deep space anomalies and false alarms. But every major power knew the truth. The outpost was never built to defend. It was built to contain too. Observe, to measure. Now it had done its job and shut down. In the Terran Defense Command underground bunker, Commander Yelena Eris stood in front of a wall of monitors. They were all dark except one. A single line of text scrolled slowly. The gate has closed. The watch moves on. She didn't understand it fully. No one did. Not even Elias Rohn, the scientist who had once activated the lens and triggered the test. He was gone now. Not dead, just gone. Vanished after his last message. His lab was sealed. His AI refused to unlock any files. Only one message remained on his private terminal. 3 words. We weren't first. That was the real fear, wasn't it? Earth had survived. Had failed. But what if Earth wasn't the first civilization to face the test? What if others had once been given the same opportunity? And what if none of them had passed? Weeks passed. Then something strange happened. Outpost Site 17 began transmitting again, not in radio, or light, or sound. It began gravitational signaling ripples. In space-time, faint but consistent. Every few hours, the same pattern repeated. No known species could interpret it, until an old Earth linguistics AI, once used for decoding ancient Terran languages, detected something unusual. The signal wasn't random. It was language, not one built from sound. Or text, but from motion. The way gravity moved. The way time stretched, it was like someone or something was speaking using the fabric of reality itself. After days of processing, the AI translated only one sentence. We gave them a chance. The message stopped there. No sender, no receiver, just those words. Back on Zorthon Prime, panic turned to fear, then fear to silence. Their empire, once the loudest voice in the stars, had stopped all operations near Earth. Ships were ordered to avoid human space. Research stations were shut down, but it didn't matter, because the silence wasn't just around Earth anymore, it was spreading. Stars that were once bright and busy had grown dim. Outposts that once buzzed with trade and traffic now showed no signs of life. Entire sectors had gone, dark one by one, as if a shadow was passing through the galaxy, but it left no trail, no damage, just silence. On a distant moon colony, a group of miners discovered something buried beneath the ice. A metal structure. Not human. Not Zorthon. It's far older. They dug around it, trying to open it. Inside, they found a room with walls made of black stone, and in the center a chair, a single chair, empty, facing a blank wall. But when the foreman touched the wall, something lit up. A projection, not of a person, but of thousands of stars, all fading. One by one, in real time, the chair turned on its own, slowly, and a voice echoed in the room. Though no one was wearing combs, they keep failing. One by one, you were close, but not yet ready. Projection zoomed in Earth, then zoomed out. A point. Far beyond the galaxy, an unknown region, a place no ship had ever returned from, and 3 words appeared in white flame. We are coming. Back in her bunker, Commander Yelena stood alone again. No advisors, no generals. Didn't sleep anymore. Every night she read the same report, the one from Dr. Rohn's old files. The one everyone else had ignored. It was labeled The Lens Project, Phase 2. Inside were notes handwritten. One passage stood out. They're not gods, not devils. They're just old, older than time. They're looking for a voice loud enough to answer back. Yelena looked up at the stars. She knew the truth now. The test wasn't about war. It wasn't about strength. It was about understanding. Could a species see beyond itself? Could it respect what it didn't control? The Zorthons had failed because they demanded to dominate. Earth had survived because for once it listened. But now something else was listening too. Something older than the Outpost. Older than the Watchers. And it was hungry. Somewhere light years from Earth, dark shape moved through the void. Not a ship, not a creature. Something between. Something impossible. It left behind no trail, no heat, no mass. Only a whisper in the minds of those nearby. You were warned. And then, they too fell silent. Now the stars held their breath. Empires stopped expanding. Explorers turned back, and Earth. Earth stood on a knife's edge, neither chosen nor erased, just waiting, because the gate had closed, but the path it guarded had opened, and whatever was watching from the other side was almost here.